Welcome back to ILTV on the hour. We are live here in Israel, bringing you the headlines of the region. Israelis today are holding their breath in anticipation of the looming hostage-for-ceasefire deal. 2 years after Hamas crossed into Israeli territory, barbarically taking Israelis hostages into the tunnels of Gaza, holding them in horrific humanitarian conditions, the time has finally come to bring them all home. These are the first days of U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire for hostage deal. The atmosphere at Hostages Square in Tel Aviv today is tense and rigid, and we have ILTV's very own Calev Ben David standing by to break down the day for us. But before the 48 Israeli hostages are returned home in a transfer set to begin only on Monday morning, first the IDF is completing its withdrawal to the Yellow Line, and hundreds of thousands of Gazans flood the Wadi Gaza bridge on their way back to Gaza City. They are all heading north today. This is day one of the 72-hour ceasefire. Now, troops in the division are concluding 2 years of battles against Hamas. They will remain present and ready for action. Is returned. Footage shows Southern Command troops adjusting operational positions in the Gaza Strip, following instructions from the IDF's Chief of Staff and Israel's Defense Minister. Katz also says that Israel's biggest challenge, once the hostages are returned, will be destroying the Hamas tunnels that remain in the enclave. With the American-backed entity or Trump's Board of Peace, Katz has instructed the IDF to act accordingly. And as a painful reminder that the war is still raging on, the IDF released the name of a fallen soldier who yesterday succumbed to wounds sustained by a grenade blast during combat in the Strip. The soldier was named as Reserves Master Sergeant Shmuel Gadi Rachamim. He was 31 years old, from Givat Ze'ev. May his memory be a blessing. And with the IDF agreement of a pause in fighting, the Mawasi corridor near Gaza's coastline saw a massive exodus over the weekend. Hundreds of thousands of Gazans are now moving north with the implementation of the temporary ceasefire as part of Trump's peace deal. Israel's border crossings are now open and allowing the entry of over 500 humanitarian aid trucks, this according to Kogat. Israel's coordination of government activities in the territories confirmed this morning that the aid currently entering includes both essential food items and fuel tankers for the Gazans. Footage from Reuters confirms that the trucks have made it into Khan Yunis and are said to be in the hands of UN officials for distribution. And U.S. President Donald Trump is slated to arrive in the Middle East after securing a generation-defining peace deal. Trump's schedule, according to reports, will begin at 9:20 a.m. Israel time on Monday morning. That's when Trump is expected to land. He will then continue to a meeting with the families of the hostages at the Knesset, Israel's parliament in Jerusalem, but not for meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister in his office. Trump will then give a speech to Israeli lawmakers at the Knesset shortly before departing for Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt to meet the mediators who brought his vision to fruition. In Egypt, Trump will attend the official signing of the deal, an event that will not see any Hamas officials or Israeli negotiators. And U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper visited Israel over the weekend. Following a situational trip into the Gaza Strip, CENTCOM confirmed that Israeli forces have redeployed from key urban areas while maintaining strategic control over roughly half of the Gaza Strip. 200 American troops are expected to be deployed to Israel to support and monitor the ceasefire deal. After visiting the Western Wall in Jerusalem, Witkoff, Kushner, and his wife, Ivanka Trump, visited Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Now, Sully was at Hostages Square last night. She was there when they were all speaking. Let's take a quick look.
Standing outside of Hostage Square, where reported 400,000 Israelis have shown up for what might be rallies that happens here at Hostage Square before the hostages return. In attendance is U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and his wife Ivanka Trump, who met with the hostages' families before this rally and also gave a speech here.
And now, as you return to the embrace of your families and your nation, know that all of Israel and the entire world stands ready to welcome you home with open arms and endless love.
All I know, and I have complete confidence in this, is that what will rise from this trauma will be a level of greatness, a level of achievement, a level of impact on the world, a level of leadership that Israel has never seen.
The President wants to share, as he has with so many of you, that he sees you, he hears you, he stands with you, always, always.
There is so much emotion in the air tonight. Anticipation and hope for the future. Here's how some people are feeling tonight.
Can you believe it? For 2 years, if I didn't sleep for 2 years, can you imagine?
To meet our friend, or who's a very close friend.
I feel like I want to cry, but I still hold it. And yeah, we are waiting to see the hostages coming back.
What you are witnessing now is the end to a very painful 2-year-long chapter in Israel's history. Next day or two, we are going to see a new chapter, one healing for the families and for the nation.
Indeed. Joining us now with more on the Trump deal, former Israel ambassador to the UN. Donnie, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Deborah.
We are currently in the midst of a 72-hour period of tension and of change. We should be seeing all of our hostages returned tomorrow morning, or now some reports are actually indicating tonight. And we already know of Gazan civilians already returning to their homes in the north. So, Ambassador Ayalon, what does the ceasefire mean for the region? Do you think we'll be seeing a new era of peace in the Middle East?
Well, the return of the hostages is only a first stage. And with really great leadership of the United States, of Trump, great of acumen of work, he is. So I believe that for us, the important thing is to see all the hostages back home. I believe until tomorrow, 72 hours after Israeli withdrew to the yellow line, according to the maps attached to the agreement. But then we'll start the real grueling and most complicated stage of demilitarization of Gaza, de-radicalization of Gaza, actually making sure Hamas will not be part of the governing system. And then we will see if we can move forward to even a grand, which would be stage 3, that is maybe a normalization or peace with Saudi Arabia and a new architecture in the Middle East. But there are many, many caveats. And as we always say, the cliche that the devil is in the details.
Absolutely. Now, and a bunch of our viewers here at ILTV actually are wondering why this coming together only now, 2 years into Israel's war with Hamas. So could you explain some of the, diplomatic and political pressures internationally as well that have, paved this?
I think first and foremost of President Trump. Mm-hmm. And also following the Israeli in Doha, I believe that catapulted their conflict very high on the president's agenda. He is the only instrumental factor here. It's able country here, contrary to the Europeans, who are all creating damage by one-sided recognition of Palestinian states and, of course, many other issues against Israel that they are performing. First and foremost, it was President Trump's personal involvement. Secondly, must have been a fatigue, especially among the Hamas. And I would say the combination of military on the ground from the IDF and political pressure. And here I think the president brought together the main backers of Hamas, namely Erdogan, which is part of the Hamas system. Erdogan is Islamist, belongs actually to the Muslim Brotherhood. So he came in and put pressure on Hamas. Hamas owes him a lot. The same thing with Qatar. I think that brought about this acquiescence of Hamas, because the key was to bring the all the hostages in one fell swoop, and this was the most important thing, and it was credited to the president.
Absolutely, and also you can't forget Egypt's role in all of this as well. But I kind of want to dwell on Qatar a little bit, because I mean, the sentiment here in Israel is a little bit vague. You know, nobody here really knows if Qatar is an enemy state or not. It seems that the U.S. is currently our greatest ally. It always has been. And the U.S. is adamant, Donald Trump is adamant to work with the Qataris to achieve peace. And he's kind of, you know, dragging Israel along with him. So in your estimate, how should Israel be reacting to Qatar as an unlikely ally?
I think we should be very, very worried of the involvement of Qatar and Turkey as well, because they are not friends and they are part of the system that supports Hamas. Without the Turkish and the Qatari support, Hamas wouldn't be in existence, certainly would not have all to perform this hideous attack on the 7th of October. So on the they will try to protect Hamas, and I see, for instance, a reality where Hamas breaches the agreement. Israel needs for self-defense to take action, and then Turkey and Qatar go to the United States, to the president, and says, no, it didn't happen, so give them another chance, kind of rounding the corner, really undermine Israeli security. On the other hand, bringing in to the tent big stake of this agreement to be maybe the more responsible. And Turkey has a lot to gain, mostly huge contracts of the reconstruction of Gaza. Turkey has many construction companies that are vying for a lot of the economic. So maybe that would a little bit the one-sided policy of Turkey towards the Hamas. And Qatar also, they need the support and backing of the United States. And now, as they have a new defense treaty with the United States, they should feel more responsible, and that should heed to American suggestions or American requests, and maybe even demands.
Absolutely. And, you know, Trump is actually expected in the Middle East for the first time since he took office for his second term. While Netanyahu, actually, on the other hand, has been to visit Trump plenty of times before, both in Washington in his office, but also in his home in Mar-a-Lago. So what do you make of this trip now, of Trump's trip to the Middle East? What can we anticipate?
Sure. I think, first of all, it's a testament to the importance that Trump attaches to this agreement. He really owns this agreement, and his prestige is very much dependent upon it. So he will do everything to make sure this succeeds. But the president also takes advantage not only of the making sure that the tactical part of the agreement, namely the first two stages, that is the hostages return, humanitarian aid to Gaza, maybe even some reconstruction of Gaza. But I think he's looking far ahead into a new Middle East. And for that, I believe he will really push, and this is a great opportunity in Sharm el-Sheikh, when the president will be with 20 or more of Arab and Muslim leaders to make sure that they would work together with the United States and Israel and not against our wishes for a broader peace.
Right, so I actually want to talk a little about that, because Trump's involvement with this whole, you know, in the beginning of the war, we were calling it the day after, but I guess that now we can call it, you know, phase two, which raises a lot of questions, you know, technically speaking. How can, you know, an American-backed entity ensure the true disarmament of Hamas? I mean, we're seeing now new footage coming out of, you know, new armed Palestinians. They're calling themselves the Gazan police force. They're armed, and they're taking to the areas that the IDF has already withdrawn from. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to see this phase two playing out. Do you think that Trump's visit here in the Middle East can make an impactful difference on that front?
Yes, I think so. I think, first of all, he will expedite the formation of some peacekeeping force in Gaza, which will be composed of many of the Arab countries, like Egypt, United Arab Emirates, which are countries that you can really trust. They are very trustworthy. And if they would do what the agreement calls for and dismantle Hamas, not only their weapons, but also we must make sure that the tunnels are no longer there, just to either block them or explode them. This is something that will be the test for continuation of this agreement, because according to the agreement, Israel will have the right for self-defense, just as we have in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we also had an agreement with a ceasefire, but this ceasefire, according to the American side letter, commitment to Israel, in turn for Israel agreeing to the ceasefire, was that the ceasefire will be enforced if we need it by force. And this is what Israel is doing by preempting any attempts of terror or building another terror infrastructure by Hezbollah. The same thing will have to be with Hamas. If it is pretty much going well so far in Lebanon, we will see. Gaza is a little bit more complicated. It's a much smaller area, very dense, and there will be many forces outside the region. In Lebanon, we have only UNIFIL, the UN, but here we may have a few more contingents, and that may be, from a technical point of view, more problematic, but the principle should hold that we will not allow Hamas to rebuild its infrastructure, and basically, at the end of the day, we should see Hamas totally out of Gaza in terms of no part in the regime and no part of the education system. So we need to see two major principles here. First of all is the demilitarization of Gaza, namely disarming Hamas. And secondly, not less important, is the radicalization of Gaza. That means changing the education system, which so far spewed so much incitement and hatred against Israel and Jews.
Well, couldn't agree more that education is definitely key to secure Israel's security in the future. Ambassador Ayalon, thank you so much for joining us today and giving your insights, as always. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Deborah.
And now we can go now to Calev bin David, who is standing by at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv to join us in this broadcast on this day. Calev, if we can go to him at Hostages Square. He is standing by right now with some information about the hostage deal that is set to take place. Calev, can you hear us? Seems like we've lost Calev. We can't hear his microphone at this point in time, but he is currently standing in Hostages Square, which is definitely the place to be today. Israelis, as we've seen in our clip already from last night, Israelis are just holding their breaths and waiting to see the hostages come home. It's been 2 years of many soldiers who have lost their lives trying to locate these hostages and bring them home. And now it looks like with this deal brought forward by Donald Trump is going to happen this time around. Let's go back to that item by our very own correspondent, India Naftali, for more.
Outside of Hostage Square, where reported 400,000 Israelis have shown up for what might be one of the last rallies that happens here at Hostage Square before the hostages return. In attendance is U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and his wife Ivanka Trump, who met with the hostages' families before this rally and also gave a speech here.
And now, as you return to the embrace of your families and your nation, know that all of Israel and the entire world stands ready to welcome you home with open arms and endless love.
All I know, and I have complete confidence in this, is that what will rise from this trauma will be a level of greatness, a level of achievement, a level of impact on the world, a level of leadership that Israel has never seen.
And the president wanted me to share, as he has with so many of you personally, that he sees you, hears you, he stands with you, always.
There is so much emotion in the air tonight, including excitement, anticipation, and hope for the future. Here's how some people are feeling tonight.
Can you believe it? For 2 years, if I didn't sleep for 2 years, can you imagine about the family?
We're waiting to meet our friend, Avital Or, who's a very close friend of my husband.
I feel like I want to cry, but I still hold it. And yeah, we are waiting to see the hostages coming back.
What you're witnessing now is the end to a very painful 2-year-long chapter in Israel's history. And within the next day or two, we are going to see a new chapter begin, one of healing for the hostages, for the families, and for the nation.
Absolutely. Like she said, that's our ILTV correspondent, India Naftali, and we're getting an array of updates today. As you know, that this is an ever-developing region, and we're going to try and keep you posted with as many as we can. It seems that, according to certain reports, Hamas may be ready to release some of the hostages already today. Reports are now saying that President Donald Trump should be arriving in Israel still tomorrow, and that he has just been approved to address the Israeli Knesset, that is Israel's parliament in Jerusalem, in English, in his native language, which is also a good sign. That might mean as well that Trump might not be in Israel to see all of the hostages released, which is the fruition of his plan. We're also getting additional reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu has discussed with the coordinator of and Israel's top negotiator, Gal Hirsch. They have already been discussing this morning, and I know that we can. And now we can go to a guest. And now sorry about that issues. Let's go now to our ILTV correspondent, Calev Ben David, who is standing by once again in Hostages Square. Let's try this one more time. Calev, are you with us?
Yes, I can hear you, Devo. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. It's good to have you on the broadcast, Calev.
Devo?
Yes.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here. And we are in Hostage Square, of course, sitting across from the IDF headquarters. The scene of so much excitement last night, as you saw in that report from India. The place was packed. Energy this evening. Now, that is certainly not the scene today. We have actually a nice, sunny, warm day in Tel Aviv. But there are some people here. It's a more relaxed scene. It's fairly crowded, nothing like last night. You get the sense, really, it's just for a lot of people, this is the last chance for them to come to the Hostage Square. People are coming here, they're taking pictures in front of the signs with the hostages, because, of course, hopefully, all this could be dismantled in a day or two. Now, I'm here with Doron Avital, Reserves Lieutenant Colonel in the IDF, former commander of Special Forces in the IDF, Sayeret Matkal. Doron, I just want to follow up on the latest reports that Devo's been citing, conflicting reports about when Hamas might release the hostages. Early reports today saying that it could be tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m., presumably right before President Trump arrives. Now there are some breaking reports, Hamas saying they're ready maybe to even release some of the hostages today. What do you make of this? Is it Hamas playing games again, or confusion? What do you think's at play here?
I'm not sure about that. It's hard to estimate, but I'm sure that our generals, the people that really are responsible for the hostage, the handling of the hostages, they know what's going on the other side. So I think it's clear for me that Hamas is determined. The hostages are going to be released. It's a question in when and how, what fashion. But the technicalities, maybe there's also some constraints, but I think they're determined to do so, and I think this is why you see the atmosphere is so, in many respects, relaxed, because people feel we are not after the fact.
Which maybe it's hasty. I mean, there were reports of Hamas still trying to get some changes in the prisoner list.
Yeah.
We have to say that includes 250 security prisoners convicted of murder.
For sure.
But Hamas was asking for more for people like Marwan Barghouti, who's been serving 5 life sentences, one of the leaders of the murderous brigades in the Second Intifada. Could Hamas be still hoping, even at this stage, to try to force some changes there?
Perhaps, I'm not sure, but I'm sure on one thing: there's no way they're going to play with the deadline that was designed in terms of releasing the hostages. Trump is coming tomorrow.
So sorry about that. It seems that our connection has just dropped to Calev, and we'll make sure to go back to him later in the broadcast. But I want to first welcome veteran journalist Ben-Dror Yamini to join us on the show right now. Ben-Dror, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're getting a lot of conflicting reports in the last few hours about the release of the hostages, when Hamas will be releasing them, and as well as how many are alive. So, I'd like to ask you, does Hamas know at all what they're doing at this point? I mean, there's so many different reports coming out. Do you think that they have located all of our 48 hostages at this point?
No, we don't know yet, because even in this very moment, negotiations are still continued in Sharm el-Sheikh. So I hope it doesn't indicate that there are problems in locating all the hostages, alive hostages. We do know that there are problems with the bodies. Yes, we know some of them will not arrive not until tomorrow midnight. Midday, sorry. But let's hope that this kind of surprises are not something which might in any way disturb or no, it's not. So it's something which is always part of the last minute in this kind of deals. We have to bear in mind that that kind of obstacles, last-minute obstacles, happened also in the previous deals. So this does not really indicate something very serious.
I also want to touch on slightly different reports about the Palestinian security prisoner list. Is there a chance that that this list can change at any point? Because there were reports that the list has been approved. Israel has already said that we are not going to be releasing the bodies of the Sinwar brothers. They are Yehia and Mohammed Sinwar, and Marwan Barghouti, who will also not be released. But will we potentially be seeing changes to that list as well?
Okay, that's exactly why Witkoff and Kushner are here, in order to solve last-minute problems. Yes. So yes, there might be minor problem here and there. We need this body, or we need that person, that prisoner. It can happen, but that's exactly why they're here. That's exactly why the delegation, to remind us all, is still in Sharm el-Sheikh. In problems. And yes, it is expected. I mean, we should not be that excited about the last minute problems. There will be, and there might be, in the next 2, 4, 5 hours, more problems that might appear. But this is not what will in any way fail the whole bill.
So, Ben-Dror, I'd actually like to ask you about something slightly different. I'd love to get your opinion on this, actually. All of the videos that have been coming out recently of the armed, Gazans, they look like they're in civilian clothing. They're not in Hamas military clothing, although it's quite clear that they're getting their arms from Hamas, and they're calling themselves something along the lines of the Gazan police force. I mean, what do you make of that?
It's very interesting. I mean, because first of all, nobody disarmed the Gaza Strip. Hamas is still whatever they had the day before the deal, they have it today. I mean, nobody expecting them to voluntarily give the weapons to anybody. It's not going to happen. And they are still there. They are the only power over there. The very fact that they are trying to disguise themselves with this kind of, no, it's only a kind of civilian police. You know what? We have to see the positive angle out of it, because even that if they will make a show, here we are, and we are controlling the Gaza Strip, and it's only us with this kind of military uniform, they know that it's not good for the moment for them. The big question will, of course, appear in the next stage after the release of the hostages. What will happen? We don't know. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. If people think that Hamas is going to be disarmed in a very easy way, it's not going to happen. Of course not when we are speaking about who is going to be the supervisor. We know that it's going to be Turkey and Qatar, and they are part of the Muslim Brothers. So a lot of question marks. One stage we achieved, yes, as the upcoming release of the hostages. But about the next stages, it's not going to be easy.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more that phase 2 of Trump's plan is littered with question marks. How can you effectively disarm Hamas? One thing that Trump did say, however, and Israel's defense minister Israel Katz has reiterated to IDF troops, is that should Hamas not disarm in the way that Trump's plan dictates, with, as you say, these Qatari and Turkish assisting bodies, or perhaps an American-backed entity taking over the Gaza, not taking over, but coming into the Gaza Strip, Israel has all of the rights to go in and achieve this militarily. Do you think that we're going to end up there at the end of the day?
Well, it's easy to write, it's easy to say. There are many things written in the agreements that are not going to be carried out. For example, paragraph 19 in the first agreement, speaking about the Palestinian state. I don't see that Israel is really going to that direction and enabling a Palestinian state. So the point is that Trump is zooming out. He's not going to details. Who is dealing with the details? It's Witkoff, it's maybe Kushner, not Trump. That's why he has this kind of conference tomorrow, speaking about the regional peace, speaking about what we are going to do with Gaza. Israel is not even participating. So, to your question, I'm not sure that Israel will be allowed by Trump to enter Gaza again, even if Hamas is going to violate the agreement.
Interesting, and I actually want to ask you about, because we actually just had a guest on who spoke about the peacekeeping forces in Lebanon after the Israel-Lebanon war, and that was UNIFIL. And we know that UNIFIL's primary job was to prevent any hostilities from Lebanon toward Israeli territory. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that they did not, complete their job in the most effective way. Can we be expecting the same thing in the Gaza Strip? Can we maybe take lessons from what happened with our border with Lebanon and implement them in Gaza, or are these just two completely different borders? I mean, what's your take on that?
No, it's different borders, but just the very same way that Israel, enabled actually the Hezbollah to gain power, just the way Israel enabled Hamas to gain power. It might happen again, maybe not on the same scale, but if somebody is expecting that Gaza is going to be a new Riviera or something, no, it's not going to happen. Problems will appear because we are Hamas, and Hamas has the ideology of extermination Jews and extermination Israel and so on and so on. I mean, they are part of the Muslim Brothers. No, it's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. We know exactly what happened with the Muslim Brothers in Arab countries. I mean, why to speak also only about Israel? They are outlawed in most of the Arab countries. Not on the only one Arab country that enables them and actually hosting them is Qatar, and not an Arab country, but also Turkey. So it's not going to be easy because this ideology is not going to disappear, not in 1 day, not in 2 days, and not in the upcoming months. So problems will be part of the story. How Israel is going to handle it and how Israel will not repeat on the mistake vis-a-vis what happened in Lebanon and before October 7 in Gaza, we have to wait and see.
That's interesting. So I actually like to ask you about this, the idea of Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip, which I know has been abandoned due to Trump's plan, because Trump's plan does not include Israeli settlements inside the Gaza Strip. Do you think that maybe if Israelis did want to go and settle like they did once in Gush Katif, do you think that that would help us to achieve a fully disarmed and de-radicalized Gaza Strip, or will that maybe make things worse?
No, look, it was actually, the whole idea was expressed by who? By Ben Gvir, by Smotrich. Nobody took them seriously. By the way, it made a lot of damage. I was in the United States, I was in Canada, and many people speaking about Israel supporters ask many questions about this kind of declaration. What is it? Is it bonanza? What is it? Is it a real estate deal? I mean, it just harmed Israel. I mean, it was a big mistake, this kind of declarations. When Trump said Riviera, well, this is Trump, he can say whatever he wants. But speaking from the Israeli point of view about settlements and about bonanza, we heard what the Treasury Ministry said. It was a huge, huge mistake. The damage was there. Nobody took him seriously, even not Benjamin Netanyahu. But the damage has been done.
So you think there was damage caused just by floating the idea of settlements? You think that the idea is damaging?
Of course. Sometimes we have to look at things from the international point of view. In the international point of view, when we are trying to fight the demonization, and I dedicated the last 20 years to that mission, to fight the demonization. This kind of declarations coming from Israeli ministers, it just helps the BDS, it just helps the anti-Israeli campaign. Why? Why do we need it? Why this kind of declarations? I mean, it's counterproductive for us in the fight against Hamas, in the fight against anti-Semitism, and so on. And who is paying the price? Not only us, not only the Israeli economy. And we heard about the boycotts, which is expanding, and the wave of anti-Semitism. Why do we need it? These declarations are only fueling those anti-Israeli campaigns.
Absolutely. I don't think any of us are welcoming all of the anti-Semitism abroad, but this actually brings up an interesting point that I wanted to touch on because, Trump's peace plan and the implementation of the 72-hour ceasefire has been very widely accepted and hailed as a good deal. Israelis are celebrating, Gazans are celebrating, Americans, all of the involved, bodies are celebrating and praising this deal. But the one group of people that we have not heard a peep from since the announcement of the ceasefire have been the pro-Palestinian movements abroad, whether it be on college campuses in the United States or on the streets of Paris or London or in Europe, in Western Europe. So they're now that there is a solution for a conflict against. So it seems like no matter what Israel does at this point, there will always be anti-Semitism, there will always be BDS, and there will always be boycotting. Is that not true? What's your assessment?
Okay, it's a very good question. A mistake. And the mistake was to call them pro-Palestinian demonstrators. No, they are not pro-Palestinians, they are pro-jihadists. That's what they are. And I'm pro-Palestinian. I mean, I want the Palestinians to prosper, whatever the solution will be. They do not want. What they want is just one thing, to be against Israel, the destruction of Israel. That's what they are fighting for. Of course, yes, they don't care about a ceasefire. They never did. Because the only one thing that they wanted is decolonization, which means the destruction of Israel, the dismantling of Israel. That's what they wanted. So now, in the very minute that they have to face the new reality, we just expose the real face. That's what is happening right now. Now, the question is, and the big question is, will they be strong as they were until now? Will they continue the same way? Who is going to support them? We don't have the answers, but I do hope, and I can guess that some of them, those who really wanted the ceasefire and peace and so on, will leave, will not join anymore the demonstrations. The extreme left-wingers and the Islamists, this coalition, Red Coalition, will continue. It was before October 7, it will be after October 7, the first one and this one. They will continue. But I do hope that they are not going to be as strong as they were until a few days ago.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Veteran journalist Ben-Dror Yemini, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your insights, as always.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And now we can go back to Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, which is currently bustling with people, where ILTV's Calev Ben David is standing by. Calev, are you with us?
Yes, Devo, I'm with you. Can you hear us there in the studio?
Yes, we can. Can you give us a report from Hostages Square? What's going on there right now?
Right, so it's many people milling about here. There is a kind of relaxed atmosphere. It's nowhere near, of course, what we saw last night, the excitement when Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and even Ivanka Trump spoke to the crowd. But there is a fair group of people who keep on streaming in and out. And as I said earlier, I don't know if it caught it, it does really seem like for a lot of people are coming by here because they feel maybe this is the last chance for them to come to this historic place. A lot of people are taking photos around, taking photos of them. I mean, this has become such an iconic location for Israelis. I think for a lot of people, they just want to make if maybe they weren't here and this is their last chance to even come here. With me, Colonel Reserves Lieutenant Colonel Doron Avital, the former commander of Special Forces for the IDF. Doron, what do you think? When you look at the crowd here, I get a sense really of people, this is coming out now saying this is perhaps our last day to be here.
Yeah, I think you feel that there's a confidence here that the deal is coming through. I mean, you don't feel tension. You feel this is done. But of course, we have to see them first. And sure, I'm not sure it will ever be called the Museum Square. Maybe forever it will be called.
Well, you know what? I have to say, Doron, I'm from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
I live right around the corner from the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah.
In front of it, there's a small, very tiny traffic circle called Kikar Trump Square.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think anyone's going to call this Tel Aviv Museum Square anymore. Maybe they should rename it Trump Square.
Yeah. There's no question that he comes out as the hero of the from the perspective of the Israelis. There's no question about him, about this. Witkoff, Kushner, whoever helped facilitate the deal, this is, for us, this is a great joy and a great day for Israel, for sure.
Right. Now, we do have some news breaking. I'm going to be very careful with this, Doron, because it is unconfirmed. As we have said early in the broadcast, it is not 100% certain when we know the hostages are going to be released. There were initial reports that it would be early tomorrow morning, perhaps between even 5 and 6 a.m. The hostage release would begin, presumably perhaps to get them all released just prior to President Trump arriving in Israel, which is scheduled to be around 9:30. But there are some reports now that, again, these are unconfirmed, of Hamas sources saying they're ready to release some of the hostages today. Now, the latest we're hearing, again, from unconfirmed sources, media sources, is that there actually may be more than 20 living hostages freed in the next 24 hours. Reports of this Nepalese migrant worker who was working in Israel on one of the kibbutzim when he was kidnapped, Pepin Joshi, I maybe mispronouncing his name. It was known that he was held captive. It was believed he was alive. The name, second Israeli, I'm not going to mention it because it's totally unconfirmed. One of those people whose fate was uncertain, believed most likely killed, reports that he may be added to the list of 20. Now, I don't want to go into the details because it's unconfirmed, but maybe this just illustrates there's a lot we don't know yet about the hostages, the conditions they're in, and what's actually going to happen in the next 24 hours.
First of all, if so, those are great news. For sure, I mean, we know less than this headquarters that deals with the hostages run by Nitzan Alon, this brilliant general. So they know more, and I'm sure when it will be verified, we'll know better, but those are great news. But of course, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of constraints. Gaza is in a havoc, so... But one thing I think we all, and we feel it in the square, and the people are confident the deal is going through, and we will see the hostages. Of course, this is before the fact, we were to after the fact, but the confidence is there, and you feel it with the people here in the square.
Right. Again, going back to the hostages, it's going to be an emotional day coming up, but a difficult day in summer. But first of all, we don't know all the conditions of the hostages. Certainly there's concern about some of them. Avital, the most prominent example, that terrible video of him looking like he was being starved to death. And I think that's something that we know the hospitals in Israel are setting up for it. Some of them, the ones closer to the Gaza Strip in Beersheba, Soroka, just in case there are some emergency cases. And also the mental condition of the hostages. This is something that we have to be prepared for.
Unfortunately, we gained some experience with hostages coming back, evaluating their condition and creating a procedure and a platforms to accommodate them in the fashion that they should be accommodated. But of course 2 years is a long time, and we've seen some of those videos, some terrible videos. So to see their condition, their emotional and physical and mental condition would have to be evaluated. But we have to hope for the best, and of course there will be a long process of healing, not to the hostages for sure, but also to the families and also to the Israeli society at large.
Right, and of course then there is the question of those hostages who I'm not even going to give a number because now, as I said, we're not even certain. But the let's say between 20 to 30 of the hostages whose remains and bodies are in Gaza. We don't know yet if they're going to be released together with the living hostages. And reports of Hamas saying, some Hamas officials saying, it's more difficult for them to even find the remains of some of those hostages.
No, this is a complex question, and maybe it will take days, weeks, or even months to find some of those remains. We have this trauma, Israeli trauma, about Ron Arad, the pilot that we never succeeded to trace his body and where is he buried. So this is a national trauma, and I hope there will be not too many Ron Arads in this case. But this is a process, and I think, as I heard, they are going to create some procedure of way of like combined forces going and looking for those remains when there's uncertainty about them.
Right, combined forces with the still yet unknown security forces that will enter the Gaza Strip. We should also mention, let's talk a little about tomorrow, because I said before, as far as we know at this stage, the hostage release has to be by noon, where the most reliable reports are that it'll be in the early morning hours, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., President Trump landing at 9:30 a.m., going straight from Ben Gurion Airport to the Knesset, making his speech in English. Again, not unprecedented that a foreign leader makes a speech. I think of Anwar Sadat speaking even in Arabic at the Camp David, of course. But an unbelievably historic. Any other time, that would just be itself a historic moment.
No, it's a historical moment. There's no question. I don't think of any other context in which a U.S. president comes and celebrates a release of hostages after such a bloody war of 2 years. This is something, and of course, his very active role. I mean, this is like, it's interesting with the respect that he gets from the Israeli public of being so actively actually facilitating this deal. I mean, this is the respect he will get, and he wrote his name in the history of Israel.
Right, and then from the Knesset, after he's going to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Herzog, it is said that he will also meet with some of the hostage families, as well as some of those hostages that came back in earlier deals. And then he's going to go straight back to the Ben Gurion Airport.
Flying to Egypt.
And flying to Cairo, to Egypt for I mean, certainly the symbolism of his visit to Israel is more potent. But in the practicality of what's going to happen in the Gaza Strip, meeting in Cairo may even be more important.
Exactly. This is an important summit, and we have not to forget that the deal was possible because he created this coalition of our countries, Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, and with the force of this coalition, he really succeeded to convince Hamas that there's no other way for Hamas but in return for ending the war to release all the hostages. So this is a great success, but the payment, I'm not sure it's payment, but I think he wants to initiate or ignite again this Abraham Accord second chapter, the peace process, and this would mean that the Israeli government would have really to consider its steps, for sure, in terms of the Palestinian Authority. Because if there's one thing that is clear that was promised to the Arab coalition, the Palestinian Authority is the body that represents the Palestinians, and this is very hard for our current government to accept.
But will not be an active part of the governance until there are reforms.
For sure, reformed and all, but this is the address.
So that's down the road, though we're not clear what those reforms. You said the Arab countries is Muslim countries.
Muslim, sorry.
Because we also see countries like Pakistan and Indonesia taking part, even
Turkey.
Potentially allowing some of their armed forces to take part in this multinational so this is a huge development.
This is a huge breakthrough. It, of course, practical way. In terms of practicality, it wouldn't be easy when there will be Arab forces or international forces with participation of U.S. or European. Then the way we move in the Gaza would be much more complicated. It's not that we didn't have stories like that in the past. In '82, in the War of Lebanon, I was there, a young officer. Of course, there were French and American Marines entering Beirut. So this is a process we did, but far away in Lebanon. This would be at our doorstep, different story. And this would mean a different way of us handling the Gaza Strip and the way we can operate in the Gaza Strip. So it's a big issue.
Also, I'm going to add to that, much closer cooperation with the United States and its armed forces. There are now, at least we were told, 100 soldiers from figures from CENTCOM, Central Command in the Middle East, that came to Israel, and they are going to be kind of an overall body directing these security
There's no question.
forces.
Also, in the terms of the coordination between our generals and CENTCOM generals, this is a very close close coordination. In many respects, this is a different story. This is not the context of Israel, not in 67, not in 73, not in the Lebanon war. This intimacy has its benefits, but we have to understand it's also a different relationship between us and the great U.S. empire.
Right. Doron, I want to go back to the Gaza Strip, specifically in the Israeli military operation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as I said, this is going to be the next day or two of very mixed emotions. Of course, the joy at the hostages. But unfortunately, there are some other sides of it. I feel we should mention Sergeant Shmuel Gad Rachamim, who is an IDF soldier that was wounded in apparently an accident involving a grenade in the Gaza Strip. And he died, I believe, overnight from his wounds. I think it's something now about 470 soldiers. And we should note, early in the week, there was another IDF soldier, Sergeant Michael Nachmani, killed by a sniper. Many people had then said they hoped he would be the last of the soldiers. But there are still many wounded. There's over a dozen seriously wounded. I mean, for the IDF, even though they've pulled out, this is still an ongoing story.
Sure, this is a heavy toll in terms of the fallen soldiers, our fallen heroes, in terms of the wounded, in terms of the post-traumatic soldiers. We had only later suicide of a Nova survivor. I mean, this this is the toll. We'll go back to it. But of course, the army paid heavy toll, but this is what the armies do, and I think their contribution, there's no question, without this military pressure building in and pushing Hamas, it will be hard, of course, to facilitate this deal, so we have to salute to our army. And I think the current chief of staff was very smart the way he moved around Gaza. He moved very...
Explain that.
I think he moved slowly, carefully. He wasn't hasty. I mean, there was this debate when how do you go about this the second campaign about Gaza, and I think he sensed that you have to go about it carefully because maybe he has felt that there would be other moves on the ground that he would force this withdrawal. So I think the army behaved very smartly in the last few weeks.
And kept up the pressure on Hamas.
To keep the pressure, but not to do hasty moves that will pay a price that we would regret.
Let's talk about going forward, because of course the Israeli forces have moved back towards
the yellow line.
We now have another line in Israel, the yellow line. But there are supposed to be further pullbacks if we see the release of the hostages. But still, the idea technically will be inside the Gaza Strip, the historic border of the Gaza Strip.
No, for sure.
The so-called security zone. So talk about that. That's a whole new security arrangement.
Yeah, of course.
For the IDF.
The perimeter around the Gaza Strip, the question of the Delphi route and the connection to Egypt. There are many open questions here, and also the ability of the IDF, as we say, to intercept or intervene when things are, as we do in Lebanon, if there are other forces there. So this is a very delicate issue that would have to be handled very carefully. We shouldn't forget in the end that Gaza is a very narrow strip. People talk about the Gaza. This is not Lebanon. This is not Syria. A very narrow there. We can move. We can act. We can observe the land. But the issue is that there will be other forces there, which are basically participating with us in the security consideration. Then we'll have to work it out very delicately. It's not easy. It reminds me a little bit like after the Oslo Accord, when we have these joint forces with the Fatah, the IDF in the West Bank, which was also not an easy thing to the army to digest, and many problems later.
There are still today.
Of course, to this day, for sure.
All right. Well, certainly, as you mentioned, historic on so many levels.
Yeah, on many levels.
On so many levels. Doron Avital, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, thank you for joining us here at Hostage Square. We're back, continue our coverage, but let's go back to our Devil Klein there in our ILTV studio.
Thank you, Calev. And to those of you who are joining us now, we are currently live from Israel. It is currently 2:30 p.m. Israel time, which means it is 7:30 a.m. in New York City. And it's day one of the temporary hostage-for-ceasefire deal. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to arrive in Israel and the Middle East for a visit both to Israel and then to Egypt. He is scheduled to land tomorrow at 9:20 in the morning. That's when he's landing at Ben Gurion Airport, Israel time on Monday morning. That's when he is expected to land, of course. He will then continue to a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Prime Minister's office, followed by a meeting with the families of the hostages in the Knesset, that's Israel's parliament in Jerusalem. Trump will then later give a speech to the Israeli lawmakers at the Knesset, and he has been approved to give his speech in English shortly before departing for Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt to meet with the mediators who brought his vision to fruition in Egypt. Trump will attend the official signing of the deal, an event that will not see any Hamas officials or Israeli negotiators. And now reports are saying that although he has been invited, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian will not be arriving. And troops of the 98th Division are concluding 2 years of intense battles against Hamas terrorists inside the enclave. Speaking to his troops, a commander of the division said they will remain present and ready for action until every single hostage, both living and dead, is returned home. Footage shows Southern Command troops adjusting operational positions in the Gaza Strip, following instructions from the IDF's chief of staff and Israel's defense minister. Katz also tweeted on X that Israel's biggest challenge once the hostages are returned will be destroying the Hamas tunnels that remain in the enclave with the American-backed entity or Trump's Board of Peace. Katz has instructed the IDF accordingly. And as a painful reminder that the war is still raging on, like Calev said recently, the IDF released the name of a fallen soldier who only yesterday succumbed to wounds sustained by a grenade blast combat operations in the Strip. The soldier was named as Reserves Master Sergeant Shmuel Gadi Rachamim. He was 31 from Givat Zehev. May it be a blessing. And with the IDF agreement of a pause in fighting, the Mawasi corridor near Gaza's coastline saw a massive stream of hundreds of thousands of Gazans over the weekend who are now traveling north with the implementation of the temporary ceasefire. They are returning to Gaza City. As part of Trump's peace deal, Israel's border crossings are now also open and allowing the entry of over 500 humanitarian. Israel's coordination of government activities in the territories, they confirmed this morning that the aid includes both essential food items and fuel tankers. Footage confirms that the trucks have and to be in the hands of UN officials for distributions. And special on the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Kushner's wife, Ivanka Trump, just gave some inspirational words to the crowds there who are waiting for the return of the hostages. And we can now go back to Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where our very own ILTV's Emily Schrader is standing by. She is, of course, in Hostages Square, where everything is happening today. Emily, can you hear us?
Hi, Devo. Thanks. Yeah, I'm here in Hostage Square, and we do see a crowd slowly but steadily building. A lot less activity, as Calev stated earlier, than we saw last night, with almost 400,000 people showing up in the square here to celebrate with great anticipation the hostage deal, hopeful return of our hostages, even as early as tonight. I'm here right now with Fleur Hassan Nahoum, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs Special Envoy for. And Fleur, thanks for joining us today. I know that you have been very active in this fight from day one. What does it mean, this hostage for a ceasefire deal? Do you expect that we'll see the return of our, I believe it's now 22, they're estimating, living hostages to return hopefully tonight or even tomorrow morning?
It's unconfirmed. There are some reports that there may be the Nepalese foreign worker may be included in this, and we've got to be very careful.
Yep.
Or potentially another Israeli.
Absolutely, which would be a wonderful surprise in this horrific experience that we've had. Look, I'll be honest, Emily, I didn't think that they were all going to come back, and certainly not in one go. And I don't see any other constellation except for President Trump putting a gun on the table and not expecting Israel to retreat first, but saying release them all, and then everything else, any other guarantees will come after that release. 2 years, too long, and my heart breaks for those families who are just trying to see whether their loved ones who've been killed, who've been murdered, they're going to get a burial. That to me is heartbreaking. And as somebody who is a friend of Rachel and Jonathan Goldberg-Polin for many years, heartbroken that unfortunately Hirsch was murdered before getting.
I mean, we do know that many of the hostages will be returning home deceased. Despite that, we've heard President Trump state repeatedly how much those families have yearned for the return even of their loved one's body that's being so savagely held hostage by Hamas since October 7th. You've spoken with a lot of these families. What does it mean to these families to have this deal on the table, to finally have an all hostages being released in one go, as President Trump has so strongly demanded from the beginning?
Well, the Sophie's choice that we had, this thing called selection. Who do we pick? Who's worse off? Who's more of a humanitarian case? At this point, they're all humanitarian cases. And if we wouldn't have gotten to this point with the Trump administration, there'd still be drib-drabbing 2 and 3 and 2, and almost kind of pitting families against each other to see who was in a worse condition to put them out. Psychological warfare. That's what we've been going through over the last few years. Psychological warfare of who comes out, who stays and why. And Bezrat Hashem, please God, they're all coming out in one go. And that is something that honestly, Emily, I didn't think we'd get to this point.
Well, you know, Fleur, you've been very about the Hasbara, the public diplomacy war, and of course that has been an additional front of this war that hasn't really been covered enough. Hamas has been so savage in how they've crafted their disinformation about what's happening, such as myth that we've been seeing so frequently. Even today I saw restaurants opening in the Strip. What's on performance, we'll say, when it comes to public diplomacy?
Well, I think all of us here are on that front line of that war, and we have felt very frustrated, not just since October 7th, but we knew there was nothing in place. There was no strategy. There was no apparatus for dealing with Israel's image, reputation, communications war. You want to call it, but you know what I mean. And I think that if we've learned anything from these 2 years is that we can no longer afford not to be present and not to be on offense when it comes to the delegitimization war on Israel. It is a very real war. It is, as many of our friends say, the Third World War that we're already in. The Third World War doesn't have to be a conventional war. We're already in that Third World War. It's that war of demonization against our country, which could affect us in many different ways. And it's time for the government to understand that this is no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have.
Right. So I want to ask you, in your current role and in some of your past roles, you've been very involved in helping Israel build relations with the Abraham Accord neighbors and probably some other things you can't even talk about with some other countries. But as we know, together with the hostage release coming up, President Trump's speech, he's going to have a historic meeting in Cairo involving some of those Abraham Accord countries, other countries in the region, even Muslim countries like Indonesia, even Pakistan that Israel's never even, people haven't even talked about. So what are the opportunities here to go from this to, again, expanding that circle that you've been involved in?
So that's a great question, and we really don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But I will say this, if people were asking me a year ago, a year and a half ago, half a year ago, what is the ideal scenario for Gaza, I would always say, take some of the Abraham Accords countries, take some of the Sunni moderate Arab countries that have de-radicalized their own societies, put them in charge of the school curriculum. The Emirates did it. Saudi has taken hatred out of their curriculums. These people can do it because they've done it before. They have experience with radical jihadi Islamism and how to eradicate it of the hatred. Having said is very much the Muslim Brotherhood. They want to re-establish the Ottoman Empire under the guise of the Muslim.
From Qatar is the principal sponsor of
yes,
Hamas.
And they're very problematic for us in Syria. So I'm a bit worried about them. But again, you know, if you can have an administration that is ruling the Gaza Strip that isn't Hamas or taken over by Hamas or the puppets of Hamas, we know that the Emirates don't want anything to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a threat to their own kingdom. We know the Saudis the same. Maybe this is that formula, but until I see it, I'm not going to believe it's going to work. And I'll say something else, and this goes back to the communications war. If it's Arabs in charge of other Arabs, and Arabs actually making sure that they keep to the promises and the guarantees of this agreement, and if it's Arabs actually, militarily running the Gaza Strip that isn't Hamas, nobody's going to be looking that way.
Right.
And maybe de-radicalization can actually happen when the media's attention is not on anything that doesn't involve actual Israel being there.
Absolutely.
Well, I think our focus right now is obviously on the first phase of this agreement, which hopefully we will see implemented tomorrow, as I stated.
Amen.
But I do want to ask you while I have you, what do you think the likelihood is of us being able to continue into the second phase, into a new leadership potentially in Gaza? I mean, are you concerned about Qatar's involvement? We've already heard a few IDF generals expressing hesitation about how much Qatar will be involved. Can we really trust them? They've been such a part of this deal, but can we trust them moving forward?
Look, I don't think we can trust anybody at this point. Obviously, we couldn't even trust ourselves on October 7th. But I will say something else. Where I think Trump is actually quite brilliant is that he understands the Arab world better than maybe some of our leaders do. And what he's done is he's shown them two pathways. Here is what peace and prosperity and a real allyship with America looks like. And this is the liability that is Hamas for you. And I think the Qataris, who are essentially interested in self-preservation more than anything, have chosen the side of the United States.
For now.
For now. So I'm encouraged by the fact that, and there's already rumors, Emily, you've heard them too, that they're trying to reform Al Jazeera. When I see, look, Al Arabiya is a Saudi channel that went through an editorial U-turn. I'm not saying they're a pro-Israel channel, but they're neutral and they're not a poison machine like Al Jazeera. If I see in the next few months Al Jazeera making a similar U-turn, I will know that Trump had the right attitude when it comes to Qatar. He showed them the promised land, not literally, that's us, and he showed them the liability that is continuing to fund Hamas and demonize Israel.
You talk about the role of America here, and the boots on the ground in Gaza may be some kind of joint Arab-Muslim force, but we know it's going to be directed by the United States.
Yeah.
100 officers from CENTCOM, Central Command, have arrived in Israel already, and they are supposed to be supervising. So we also are seeing, I think, Fleur, an unprecedented U.S. direct involvement in Israel's security. For example, that a solution in Gaza moves forward more than we've ever seen any administration commit itself to that kind of project here.
Well, listen, if America, UNIFIL or UN or UNRWA, I think the biggest victory of this whole thing is to try and kick UNRWA out, kick the UN out, make them essentially irrelevant. Yes, I'm quite happy the Americans are there. They helped us out with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Without them, we couldn't have set up the alternative food distribution system that, in fact, cut Hamas's legs off in governing the Gaza Strip. And so, if it's the Americans there, I can sleep better at night. If the Americans can control the Turks and the Qataris, or essentially they're running the show and the Turks and the Qataris are there for the kind of peace of mind of the Arab world, I can live with that too. We just have to see what's going to be happening.
Now, before I let you go, I do want to ask you one more thing. We've already seen footage coming out of Gaza, the Gaza Defense Force, which of course has already, we know, is Hamas being rebranded as some sort of pseudo security forces. Despite that, what they're actually doing on the ground, as we've seen in the gruesome footage, is actually executing and torturing many Gazans on the ground, of which there's been little to no protest internationally, despite the fact there's still protests about Israel. I want to ask you, how much power do you think Hamas will have in the future, and how can Israel prevent that from growing?
That's $1 million question. I think that, again, it depends how much involvement the Americans are going to have. It depends how much involvement the Qataris are going to have. It could actually be a positive thing that the Qataris are like, look, we've given America these guarantees. We've got all these goodies on the table. You're not going to screw it up for us. You know, it could. The main thing is that if Hamas is not the governing force of Gaza, even if they're somehow involved, it could be an opportunity to kind of limit every time, every month, limit their involvement, because ultimately they pose a threat to peacekeeping forces, not just to Israel. And the biggest, I think, and overlooked, the biggest achievement of this is that we're not retreating. completely. We're kind of half in, and we're not going to retreat anymore unless there's a different governing force, and that gives us the power.
I think not only that, but of course we know that demilitarization, Hamas surrendering and putting down their arms is a condition of the future phases of this agreement.
And
let's
otherwise
hope
we're not retreating.
Exactly. Let's hope that continues, but we'll be following that closely. Fleur, Hassan, Nahoum, thank you so much for joining us today on this special broadcast. Go back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emily, for giving us that coverage, and thank you as well to Fleur and Calev who joined her. And we are, of course, in these crazy days. So we are going to give you a lot of updates just here from the ground. So Trump is still expected to arrive in morning, but I'm just going to reiterate what Calev was saying there on the hostage, BP Joshi, who actually is maybe potentially one of the 20 living hostages. And as we continue to get more information, we will obviously continue to update you as well. But as of now, we have 20 confirmed living hostages that should be released within the next 24 hours. Hamas has reportedly said that they can agree to release them already as soon as tonight, which is even before Trump arrives in Israel, although it was previously believed the hostages would come after Trump. But his trip is as follows. He should be arriving in Israel at 9:20 Ben Gurion in Israel. Straight after that, he's actually going to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister, with Benjamin Netanyahu, at approximately 10:15 in the morning. After his meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister in his office, he will then continue to meet the families of the hostages. He's meeting them in the Knesset, which is Israel's parliament. And after the hostage, he'll be speaking to all of Israel's lawmakers, those who wish to be in attendance before he starts for Egypt, of course, for the signing to the deal that is currently on the table. Egypt for that, which means that he's going to be in Israel for a little bit less than 4 hours, which is not as much as people maybe would have thought that he would be in Israel for. But he's coming to Israel, and it's going to be a move likely going to change a lot of things here on the ground. And we're, of course, waiting for more information on the hostages, but also Trump and his arrival to Israel. Of course, we'll continue to update you as more updates come out. But let's go back quickly to Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where Emily Schrader is still there to give us another update for us.
Hi, Devo. Yeah, great to be back with you so quickly. So we're here with David Rebel, a political analyst here in Israel, an Israeli-Russian citizen. I'd love to start by getting your take on what's happening in the media. I know you follow a lot of the Arab media. How are they receiving what's happening? What are they reporting about this hostage release?
They're celebrating what I see in the media. They are not celebrating the hostage release. They're celebrating the ceasefire, the attempts to return home, especially to the northern Gaza, because they were restricted during the war to return back. So the Netzarim corridor, which is placed in Gaza, they're more celebrating this fact. Arab media is covering right now the houses that were damaged or destroyed, so they are focusing on that one. And the hostage release is like 2% of the media that cover it.
Well, I saw that you're tracking a lot of the social media responses also in English. And one of the, I think, disturbing trends that we've seen, I'm not sure, Calev, if you've seen it as well, a lot of Gazans sharing that they are Holocaust survivors. And it's a in Gaza, the fact that this was a legitimate war. Are you seeing similar rhetoric?
Yes, I do. I also see the genocide survivor, the Holocaust survivor. They compare themselves to Anne Frank. And also some of them are joking about the writing down about what they went through. I mean, honestly, this is disgusting because they use the tragedy of the Jewish people in order to gain sympathy. It's very dirty, I would say.
In fact, there is an irony here, and a lot of commentators have pointed it out, that a lot of pro-Palestinian, though I would call them more anti-Israel activists or celebrities, who have been calling it genocide and calling it for a ceasefire, and suddenly when it's not maybe the ceasefire that is exactly suddenly you're dissatisfied. You would think if there was a ongoing genocide, first and foremost, so happy and grateful, but apparently that rhetoric has kind of stopped because it's just not the outcome.
Demonstration in campus celebrating the ceasefire, the so-called genocide is over. I have seen the genocide that was over by the negotiations and the hostages. Because first of all, victims do not hold hostages, and second of all, victims do not hold negotiations. And they also had terms, and everybody listened to them, Hamas in particular. So, yeah.
When it comes to your average Gazans on the ground, what you've been seeing on social media, I mean, are they relieved? Do you sense that they're relieved by the ceasefire, or is there still an indoctrinated culture that's dedicated to Israel's destruction? I mean, from what I've seen, it seems like we've seen both from different groups within Gaza, but now that Hamas is maintaining some emblem of control in neighborhoods, at least, what is the... We've already seen Hamas persecuting some of the Gazans. What are the Gazans saying that you hear?
There are mixed reactions. Some of them are afraid, some of them are seeing this as hudna, which is in Arabic means the ceasefire in order to regroup and to continue the armed resistance, as they call terrorism. So it's very mixed. Some of them are really relieved because, I mean, there are Gazans who are tired of war and wanted this war, but there are Gazans who celebrate the fact that that there is a ceasefire, and also some of them think they won. Some of them think they won the war, frankly. I've seen the celebration.
The question, David, we know that there is supposed to be some kind of multinational force, perhaps Arab, Muslim multinational force that will ensure security. But ultimately, they have to look on the ground to see if there are enough Gazans who are willing to take on Hamas and take responsibility over Hamas. Is there I won't say, is there at least enough a minority of Gazans in willing to do that and to replace Hamas?
I think there are in Gaza who want to remove Hamas because some of them do understand that Hamas brought the disaster and devastation Strip and not Israel, so they are directing their anger towards the right place and is to blaming Hamas because it functioned as an Iranian proxy, and they understood that Gaza was destroyed for the sake of Iranian money, and they do understand it right now. And of course, there are people who oppose this, and they are still pro-Hamas, especially people who were, receiving money from Hamas, and they were not. I mean, there were a lot of people because Hamas functioning, it controls both the civilian aspect of life and also the everything it goes, money, food, aid, everything.
Now, there's a lot of questions that persist about the next stage of what's going to happen in Gaza in terms of governance, as we've discussed. But I wanted to ask you, because I know you do a lot of work on this, the Islamic Republic of Iran, when it comes to their involvement and the multi-proxy war that we've seen continuing even whilst these negotiations were going on with ballistic missile attacks from the Houthis. I mean, what do you expect to see when it comes to the Islamic Republic? Is this actually over, or are we talking about a temporary ceasefire on one front?
Well, I think everybody understands that the Iranian regime is the head of the snake. And I mean, if we're not dealing with it and the regime is not removed, there's going to be something else in Gaza. Probably there another proxy or something, because the job is not finished, to be honest. Because once the Iranian terrorist regime continues to function, continues to fund its terror proxies, the war is not over.
Now, before I let you go, I want to ask you, as an Israeli, what does it mean to you to see this ceasefire, to see the potential release of our remaining hostages, even as early as tonight, we're hearing, according to the most recent reports? How does that make you feel? How does that make your colleagues feel? What have you seen from the Israeli public so far, just in the last 24 hours? Just pure happiness. I mean, I cannot even describe the feeling that in the end of the day, they are coming home. It's over for them. It's over for us. We're going to start healing. We're going to start processing and work on mistakes. And hopefully, we're going to be united as a society. So it's, I see the light in the tunnel. That's how we feel like. It's a pure joy. And I think for the first time, that's really great to hear from Israel, because it's been such a struggle, as you know, as we all know, throughout the past 2 years, and for these hostages to be returned exactly 2 years to the Hebrew date of when they were kidnapped. It's obviously very, very symbolic. So we are anxiously awaiting updates. The most recent reports that we have are saying that as early as this evening, we could see 20 of the hostages, the living hostages, be returned. Again, we're waiting for final confirmation But that is what the rumors are, at least in the Arab media that we see so far. We will keep you updated on all of the latest on that front as the information comes in, and hopefully we will be reporting good news very, very shortly. Devo, back to you.
Absolutely. There's definitely conflicting reports, Emily, but I'd actually like to keep you on while we have you at Hostages Square. I couldn't help but notice there's a massive crowd behind you. There's groups of people that keep, passing by and taking a peek. It looks like a massive crowd. Could you talk to us a little bit about what's going on at Hostages Square right now? What's the environment there like?
So since we arrived, as I stated, it hasn't been quite as crazy as last night when there were over 400,000 people who gathered here to celebrate the ceasefire and the announcement that these hostages were returning, something that has been in the hearts of every single Israeli, I think, since October 7th. Itself. It's been tremendous suffering on the ground here in Israel. But since I arrived today, it's been pretty calm, pretty quiet. But with every minute, we see more people gathering in the square. Kind of a nervous anticipation, I think, over the entire environment here in the square. Just a few minutes ago, I saw a young woman playing piano. We saw a group doing a performance. I'm not sure if it was a performance preparing for later or just here in the middle of the day, but we do see definitely a different energy than I personally have ever seen in this square, including when we broadcasted as ILTV here at the release, honestly disgusting ceremonies that Hamas put on of our hostages previously. Well, people were obviously delighted and thrilled to see the return of our hostages on those days and in those ceremonies. I think here it's almost a sigh of relief as the information comes in, and we're just kind of waiting. We're waiting for the time to pass until we can announce that our hostages are home, that they're safe, that they're getting the necessary treatment that's required after such a long time in imprisonment. And I do want to emphasize that what we've seen these hostages go through, and what the testimonies that we've heard from the returned hostages, such as Eli Sharabi, and the torture that he went through, also Idan Alexander, who was released now very famously through the intervention of Steve Witkoff, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff, and President Trump himself. Idan Alexander, an American-Israeli citizen who was in the IDF, serving in the IDF, was kidnapped for many, many months and was released. But what he's told us about what happened in Gaza and how he was treated obviously has raised tremendous concerns for any of the remaining hostages and their families. Very painful to listen to their experiences of torture, of intentional starvation. And remember that this is happening at the same time that Hamas has been orchestrating an entire disinformation campaign about starvation for the sole purpose of blaming Israel. And this is something that they even, harmed their own people. Calev, we saw so many reports about starvation, accusing Israel even of intentional starvation of the Gaza Strip by the short-term limitation on aid.
But what we also saw constantly, and this got out, I would say, despite Hamas, is footage of Hamas terrorists trying to take control of aid convoys.
That's right.
All that aid that was going in, even to the point of shooting on Gazan crowds in order to take control that aid conduit, which is why, of course, Israel, the United States, some other bodies tried to set up a kind of alternative aid route into Gaza. I mean, again, the Gazans, the Hamas officials, have all looked pretty well fed.
Yeah, they do.
And they were talking that they had stored up food reserves for months to carry on the fight. While you saw people like Avital in the horrific footage of him looking like near starvation. So yes, a deliberate strategy to create both among Gazans this famine. How many times did we hear over the past 2 years there's famine, and then no, there isn't, and then it's been near famine just about every
since
other
day
week,
one.
Since day one, and this has been the strategy, and it'll be good to see what the real picture is in Gaza. Maybe some reporting coming out that Hamas is not controlling, so we really know what was happening on the ground there, the areas they controlled.
Well, we'll definitely be watching closely for updates about what's happening on the ground inside Gaza. But, you brought up a really good point, Calev, and that is that, there was starvation occurring for the hostages. And we know that Hamas had been stealing this aid, had been selling it at double and triple the prices, causing their own people to suffer, not because there wasn't food available, but because they were selling it at triple the prices, which the public couldn't afford. But I do think one of the other things that's really been disturbing about this whole war is that the United Nations was really complicit in a lot of this disinformation surrounding famine. I mean, almost from day one, we've seen the United Nations claiming that there's genocide or accusing Israel of genocide, accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing for encouraging civilians to get out of harm's way. And then, of course, the famine myth, the starvation myth, which occurred long before any actual cutoff of aid took place.
Right.
So it isn't logical, and yet we did see time and time again UN officials buying into this and promoting that.
Right, it is one of the unsettled issues of this conflict is what role will some of those discredited agencies like UNRWA have moving forward? Will there be alternatives set up by this new incoming administration that supposedly, we don't know, there's talk Tony Blair may be involved, certainly American officials be involved. Will they be able to create an alternative framework there in Gaza?
I hope
well,
so.
You know, David, you're still with us. I want to ask you, I know you did a lot of research about the United Nations, their involvement, and of course, UNRWA's involvement. As we know, they did have teachers, they had humanitarian aid workers who took part in October 7th, but also took part in the kidnapping, specifically of Yonatan Samarano, one of the hostages they abducted on video. They abducted his dead body and brought it into Gaza, where it's been held captive since then. What is your take on the UN's involvement from October 7th through today, and could they have any future in Gaza?
Well, I hope not, because they were complicit in the October 7th massacre. They knew exactly what was going on in Gaza before the October 7th and afterwards. They knew exactly what was going on, where the hostages were held. Some of them took part in the kidnapping. And of course, they are familiar with the terrorist activities because they took part in them. And I mean, the whole system should be completely renewed. I mean, it has to be changed, UNRWA especially, because it's not working. They are helping Hamas, and in fact, Hamas relies on them. And do you remember the humanitarian aid? They asked the UN asked the Blue Police to distribute the aid, and what is the Blue Police in Gaza? It's us. So it's not
like
about
the Gaza security forces that are being rolled out now.
Exactly, such as Gaza Health Ministry, because the media likes to cite them as such, but they are Hamas-run health ministry, so it does not make any sense. So the whole system needs to be changed completely.
All right, well, we do have to wrap up, but I'm going to go back to you in the studio, Devo.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emily, so much for your coverage from Hostages Square as well as Calev. You guys are really where everything is happening right now. We still don't know exactly when the hostages will be returning to us, but reports are conflicting reports are confirming that it will be either tonight or tomorrow morning. The point being that Hamas is currently interested in releasing the hostages prior to the arrival of American President Donald Trump. But that is unfortunately a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. We know that there are updates coming out consistently, and we'll make sure to update you every time that we get the information coming out of the region. I want to thank our distinguished guests for joining us on this very special broadcast: Ambassador Dani Ayalon, Ben Yamini, Lieutenant Colonel Doron Avital, and Fleur Hassan Nahoum. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Devo Klein. Thanks for watching, and check back at ILTV for all of the latest news. Take care.